I was asked to wait so he can start the video. Hi, I'm Terry Smith. I think some of you know about Franklin Street Works. Has anyone not been to Franklin Street Works before in this room? Oh, well, that's going to save us a lot of time. Well, we're all going back there after this, and there's complimentary wine and cheese, because it's art, and that's what we do. And you can purchase beer at really reasonable prices, and So we're not for profit. You all know that. The show that's up right now, if you haven't seen it, it's Danger Came Smiling, feminist art and popular music, and it's a really great show with sculpture and video and whatnot. So I hope you can come back after. And I guess I'll bring Alice up since I don't really need to say much more about Franklin Street Works. Alice Knapp.
Well, welcome to the Ferguson Library. This collaboration with Franklin Street Works came about because we were asked by the Aspen Institute to pilot a project called What Every American Should Know. And the actual dialogue, public dialogue, happened October 26th. But since we've been playing around with community conversations for a while, one of the things that we learned was that you just can't have a public dialogue without having some programs around it. And we also have found the last couple of years that public art projects are a lot of fun, and asking the community to participate is one way that somebody can participate without actually spending 2 hours in a conversation. So what we did is we did a series of lectures. We did one by Ari Berman on the history of the Voting Rights Act. We showed a documentary on John Lewis. We had the public dialogue, and over 70 people came out and really tried to name 10 things that they thought every American should know, which is an impossible task. And if you're inspired, feel free to go to the Aspen Institute's What Every American Should Know page and put your top 10 things that you think every American should know. But we really felt it was important, and we reached out to Franklin Street Works to have an art component of it, because a lot of the things that we've seen that people wrote down as every American should know were art related. Either it was jazz or it was an artist, and we felt that we wanted to have that component. And so Franklin Street Works immediately said, yes, we know what we can do. We've gotten a grant. It was underwritten from the Fairfield County Cultural Alliance, and without them, this couldn't have happened. And now I'm going to bring Terry back up to talk about the project.
I think I'm going to need to raise this for you, too. I don't know how hard this is to do. It doesn't go any taller, David. You're going to have to just improvise. So with contemporary art, sometimes it's good to have mystery and not know what the heck's going on, and sometimes it's not good to have mystery, or it complicates things and just befuddles. So David and I collectively decided it would be good for me to give you a little insight into the process of the piece. So we came up with this rather quickly, and David was amazing in coming up with concepts and getting it all together in a very quick time. So the idea is that we had this installation, which Olivia Giblin was the docent on weekends, of a video that David made that was sort of vaguely patriotic. So it was like this sort of ad for a candidate, but it didn't really say much, and it was kind of like a little bit slapstick. And then we asked people, we had 4 different prompts or questions people could respond to, some of them about the video, some just about being American. So people did that, and then he took those comments, and they informed this speech. So the whole idea the whole time was the comments were going to inform this performance. So I will now introduce David Livingston.
Good afternoon. Whoa. Good afternoon, Stamford. I'm proud to be here. and I thank you for your time. For those of you who know me, I'm David Livingston, and I'm running for Prime Minister of the United States of America. America has no leadership. The American dream is dead, and we must consume more cheese fries. I'll get into the nuances and complexities of these issues later, but first a little bit about me. I grew up right smack in the middle of America, in a little house built out of felled logs and wood-fired bricks of clay. My father was a benevolent wheat farmer who often gazed into the sun while chewing on a long strand of wheat. And my mother was a McDonald's worker who spilled piping hot coffee on a woman's lap at a drive-thru back in the 90s. In that little house, we had a tiny analog television set that would blare the word of the gods and the insights of Jerry Springer. I listened to it, and it told me things, wise things. It taught me to throw chairs when I'm mad. It taught me that Steve Wilkos is my personal savior and an agent of love and peace. It taught me that Dr. Phil is a kind, balding man who helps people. Those televised messages of hypnotic wisdom led me into politics, and they gave me a depth of mind to lead all of you until the day I die. Hear me now. Hear me speak. I speak truth. I speak American truth. I blare it and I bleed it. I mean it. Every word I say is your gospel. Every word is the word of the Lord. When I tell you what America is, you must nod in accordance. America is a cheese fry. Good. You're listening. America is a map of America. Good. You're listening. America is diversity. Good. America is full of great people, hard-working people of all races and creeds. But America has no leadership. The American dream is dead, and we must consume more cheese fries. We must. Our politicians have forsaken us. They use the same meaningless sentence structures and speak the same hyperbolic language, and they, along with the news media, have marginalized the truth and flattened the lives of working Americans. Many of these people are cowards who don't care about people who are different to them. And too few of them fight for women, minorities, or LGBTQ people. Quite frankly, most of them fight for themselves, their power, their complacency, and a generic blend of nothingness. They have no concrete plans for anything, and they carry no action They must apologize for their past performances. We must consume more cheese fries. We must. I realize that Americans feel invisible, confused and saddened by the direction of our country, the direction it's taken. I realize that many Americans want and need change. As Prime Minister, I promise to fight this broken system that permits politicians to answer first and foremost to lobbyists and special interests. To combat this blight on our nation, I will put forth a practical course of hypnotic trance work and psychiatry that will guide Paul Ryan and the United States Congress into doing my bidding. You may be wondering whether or not I'm qualified to hypnotize someone, let alone an entire congressional branch. Well, let me reassure you that I've been training myself on the website Free Hypnosis Downloads for many years. I am to political corruption what Steve Wilkos was to an angry guest on Jerry Springer. I will gently but firmly hold corruption at bay with my powerful spray-tanned arms and my broad mountainous shoulders. I will be America's Steve Wilkos, the protector, the resuscitator. I'm strong enough to withstand chairs being flung at us. I will persevere and we will prevail. These craven politicians, conservatives, and greedy lobbyists have decimated the American dream, if it ever existed in the first place. I'll tell you what, my mother, who toiled away in McDonald's until she was fired for scalding a woman with coffee at the drive-thru, would never have stood for an America where greed and money dominate. And my father, who tilled the fields of our farm while I watched Jerry Springer, my father would have stood for an America where politicians allow racial injustice, would have stood for an America where politicians would not have stood for an America where politicians allow racial injustice and educational stagnation to occur. I can picture my father right now, staring into the sun with a strand of wheatgrass in his mouth, fighting against complacency, fighting against confusion and sadness, fighting for women, minorities, LGBTQ people. And my mother, why, she would have spilled piping hot coffee on Paul Ryan's lap and watched him scream with a weird sort of pain pleasure that a CrossFit enthusiast would have. Then she would have given him some ice because she wouldn't have wanted him to feel pleasure in his pain. But the ice would have been really cold and Paul Ryan would have felt a weird pleasure in the discomfort. And then he would have developed an addiction to scalding himself and then icing himself directly following. Anyways, I digress. The American dream is in a coma, folks, and it's not coming out anytime soon. We've been tricked by the wisdom gibberish of politicians and CNN. We've been tricked into giving away our justice civil rights, and health care. We've been tricked into believing in a thing that doesn't exist, and all we have left is a dark, deteriorating mass. We need change, and I'm the person to bring it to you. The American dream wasn't just about families immigrating to America and finding jobs that could support them. It was about the image we all see in our minds when we picture an American. The image that is supposed to fill us with pride. The image that sits in the back of our minds and guides us to feel a sense of connection to where we live, a sense of connection to our country, a sense of entitlement to the bounty our country has to offer us. Close your eyes and picture an American. What do you see? We must work to change our limited idea of what it is to be American. There are more classical images of Americans than the image of a rural white man like my father, a farmer who stood in a verdant field with a wheat strand in his teeth, squinting into the sun. There's more to this country than George Washington. There's the frozen image of my mother in the act of spilling coffee on a McDonald's customer. There's the American daughter of Vietnam War refugees, whose American experience is different than most of her WASPy neighbors. There's the elderly Muslim military veteran in a wheelchair playing with his grandkids. And there's the hard-working African-American woman who went to a historically black college and works with competent people from around the globe. There's the Latino judge balancing the scales of justice. There are families of all races and creeds celebrating over a Thanksgiving dinner. If we are to begin to resuscitate the American dream, we must hypnotically embed these images in our minds. If we are to begin to address the concerns of all Americans, we must hold on to this diverse, beautiful collage of American identity, even as we feel it is slipping away. We must indoctrinate all our children with a wider array of imagery than the benevolent white farmer. We must build a bigger American history, a bigger dream that doesn't exclude the stories integral to what makes America, America. We all know God created every form of what you see, and more even than what you don't see. This variety is the miracle of our American lives. Finally, we must consume more cheese fries. Cheese fries are quintessentially American. We eat them at county fairs, at baseball games, and roadside diners. They inform us as Americans. Cheese fries unify us. They bring us together. They deliver us to common understanding. The ingredients of the Cheez Whiz that is ceremoniously poured onto the fries are as diverse as this great nation. In the Cheez Whiz alone, there is whey, milk, canola oil, maltodextrin, milk protein concentrate, mustard flour, vinegar, molasses, corn syrup, water, salt, caramel color, garlic powder, sugar, spices, tamarind, natural flavor, sodium alginate, sorbic acid, added color, cheese culture, enzymes, and more natural flavors. Cheez Whiz, according to Wikipedia, was developed by a team led by the food scientist Edward Treisman in the early 1950s. Cheez Whiz is quintessentially American. The idea to combine Cheez Whiz with fries is uniquely American. We must look to this moment with pride and bring back the excitement around food science that so spurred our economy and brought us cheese fries. We must consume and digest the American ingenuity of cheese fries. All Americans must soak it all up so that they may understand what it is to be an American. They must consume the multifaceted flavors of Cheez Whip, coupled with salty fry grease. America has no leadership. The American dream is dead, and we must consume more cheese fries. These three problems may seem insurmountable, but we can climb the high peaks of injustice the way Steve Wilkos climbed the stage during every taping of the Jerry Springer Show to protect guests and audience members from bodily harm. The way my father kept staring into the sun even as it blinded him. The way my mother bounced back after being fired from McDonald's and raised 3 children and started her own small burger chain in the middle of the United States. The way every one of you fine Americans sitting here today has kept on going in the face of obstacles, large and small. If we come together, we can build a new American leadership, a new American dream, and consume lots of cheese fries. I envision an America where all Americans can live together, thrive together. I envision an America where the Muslim veteran, the African American businesswoman, the Latino judge, and the Asian American movie star can sit at the same table with the white farmer with a straw of wheat in his mouth and consume a platter of cheese fries and celebrate the science and uniquely American ingenuity behind Cheez Whiz. Vote for me on the 15th. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. God bless this great nation. God bless you all, and God bless America. Thank you so much.
You have a microphone. It's fine.
So I understand that for the month that the installation was in the lobby of the library, people were writing their reactions to the video and on slips of paper and putting them in the ballot
Yeah.
box. And then you collected those and reviewed them. And did you use any of them verbatim in the speech that you just put together, or was it more of a synthesis of some of the themes
That's a great question.
that you were seeing?
Cheese fries was one of them.
Cheese fry. I saw the cheese fry slip of paper.
You know, I had one paragraph that I basically, the question of, is this candidate fighting for you? I just looked, I literally looked at what people said and constructed a paragraph out of it about, what's wrong with politics. So all of those statements were what people said. And it sort of constructed that sentence. the American dream. You know, I realized actually it was actually challenging. I'm not sure I succeeded, but it was challenging to write something that was at all coherent out of. It wasn't out of all of the statements. So eventually, I had to go online and look at how speeches are structured, and I had to decide on a theme, right? And the theme, and so I tried to find sort of overarching themes that came up again and again, except for cheese fries. That only came up once. But
Good one.
yeah, it's a good one. You can't, yeah. Hi.
What surprised you the most about the comments or the four, out of it? And what would you think about running for office?
What was the last part of the question?
What'd you think about running for office after all this?
Yeah, right. What surprised me the most?
If anything.
I think it was. I was actually surprised that as many people took the question seriously and really had earnest responses, and it was actually quite moving to see people's responses to a video that was quite absurd, and that surprised me a lot. I thought there would be more absurd stuff in there, but it was just it was really people answering the questions and talking about their experience in America. And I don't think I haven't made any plans to run for office yet. So yeah.
So as Terry was mentioning in the beginning, the transparency of what's behind a public art piece is sometimes important to reveal and sometimes important to not. In the video, when you were essentially doing a public performance to capture that footage, how much did people know? What did they think was going on? You held the baby.
Well, the baby, the father of that child is here and is a friend of mine. But Jeff reported to me that after I'd left, some parents came up and were like, why was that man accosting you in the playground and holding your child? So, but actually, out here, right in front of the library where a lot of the footage was shot, I'm used to it being a public performance artist that people ignore you a lot. And I got the sense that there were people that were interested. There was everything in between, people who were semi-interested, but there's always that person who really wants to talk about politics and wants to talk. And so, I had a couple of those people, and actually one of them made it into the video because I sort of stopped performing and I ended up just having a conversation with her about politics, and it looked a lot more natural, actually. So it looked like I was actually talking to a constituent. But yeah, there's a wide range of responses.
So I'm curious, I know you've been working with this material for a long time, but even thinking about this speech in particular, and surely some of the pieces of paper that you got and the responses, but how do you feel the results of that real presidential election informed this speech, if at all, in your preparation and delivery of it?
It's definitely, I feel like as just a person, it's hard not to be profoundly affected by the election. Obviously, it's more affecting to people other than myself, but it's still affecting, and I think I felt like I felt odd about how to handle. I felt uncomfortable with it because basically what I've been doing in my work has been to sort of parody and a lot of people have been doing this, but to question the messaging, like the medium by which nothing is communicated to people, but the way in which it influences people. And obviously that's been happening in our politics for a long time. But I went out and made a completely ridiculous stump speech and, pretended that I was running for office in New Haven, and people bought it, and I was struck by that people bought that I was an actual candidate and saying, not much of worth and holding up giant ink blot signs and stuff like that. So, right. It's that I look a little bit the part. I'm a white male. That helps. I'm tall. And so, yeah. But I think I was more comfortable. It's a weird time. I think what's so weird about right now, there's a lot of stuff that's weird about it, but what's weird for me as an artist is that I don't feel like, at least in the Northeast, I have to point people or critique the media in the way that I was critiquing it, because it feels like it's so obvious now and so present in everybody's life and such a concern. So I'm still kind of struggling with, what I do with my past work and where it goes after this has happened. Say that again? What is what? Well, like just my, I guess my work evolves, and I don't just come up with a new idea off the bat. It usually grows out of something else. And so while this election was happening and before it was happening, I was working on, satirizing and poking fun at candidates and campaigns. And obviously that's a popular thing. I mean, it's on the Daily Show and every other news show. But I think, trying to find humor in it can be difficult right now.
Would you be willing to talk a little bit about how people changed between the before and after? Olivia had a special insights into the project because she was there 2 weekends in a row, and one of the weekends was before the election and one was you So I thought if you just quickly, like a couple of things.
Hi, everybody. So I was helping out with this installation, and I actually was able to see the difference between before and after the election. So before the election, everybody was, there were still people who were trying to stay away from politics because this was like a very, oversaturated election, I feel. And people, were getting really invested in the election. So before the election, people were more open to talk about how they felt. Oh, you want me to stand? Okay. So people were more willing to, talk about how they felt. And then after the election, there was like a huge drop-off in people, feeling comfortable with even approaching something that seemed political or approaching something that they felt like they would have to talk about how they, felt about politics. But out of the people that did approach me at the installation, their input was really passionate, and they stayed for a really long time, and they would actually engage me in conversation. So it's just interesting to see the huge difference before and after a pretty major political event.
Any other questions? David Green's here. We got a grant for this also. I can't remember the long name for the grant, but it's from the Cultural Alliance, Fairfield County. So thank you.
I mean, are you satisfied that the installation impacted people's thinking to the extent you wanted to, or even actions, or, what were your base goals in doing the installation, and did you get there?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think I wanted people to think about, the absurdity of politics and the absurdity of the messaging, and question, hopefully, how they're potentially manipulated by politics and the news media. But also I wanted them to be entertained on some level. I wanted them to, even if it is something like they just kind of laugh and see, oh, I get what he's talking about, that's funny, and have a certain moment of catharsis, that's important. Obviously, post-election, it feels like it's hard to know what art's function is post-election, because it seems like there are so many practical things that we should be doing and actions we should be taking. So I'm still kind of trying to figure out exactly where. Yeah.
Art, thank you, to disrupt or to further the cause of satire, as a comfort to people, a la SNL or Colbert or Daily Show? Or just as references, not as comparison.
That's a good question. And I think one of the kind of nice things about art is that you don't always have to go for the laugh. And I love comedy, and it's very important to what I do, and I want my work to be funny. But there's a certain freedom in art where you can kind of go in between comedy and just put a bunch of different things into the work. I feel like with SNL, it's like there are a lot of really important things that SNL has done, and there's a lot of important things that all of these John Oliver and all these people are doing. But I think I like art because it doesn't have to be funny. It can be kind of an accidental thing.
It can be powerful.
Yeah, it can kind of vacillate between being serious and being funny, Yeah.
Taping.
Yeah, I know that for myself, at this point, it is extremely depressing to hear this because that's the kind of speech that won the election.
Right.
Exactly. And I mean, but why is it that politics, I have my own ideas about this, but I'm wondering why do politicians try to edit them down to this beneath the lowest common denominator sort of talk? That is, when Lincoln and Douglas debated in 1860, the language that they used in their debates was on a 12th grade level. By 2000, it had gotten down to 6th grade, and Trump went a lot lower than that. And this is, I think that what's happening is that politicians know that what voters want is somebody who agrees with them about everything. And so the more they say, the more they end up disagreeing with each person on one thing or another. And so they try to say as little as possible. Is that your view of what's happening?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think, the project I did right before this, I ran for fake alderman in New Haven, and the idea, I did these ink blots drawings, and they were campaign signs. And the idea was that voters could project whatever whatever they wanted, whatever associations that they drew with the sort of Rorschach-like ink blot.
Yeah.
And I think that's what politics has become. It's a kind of, I mean, I'm sure they have a whole team of psychologists studying, buzzwords that affect people, and I'm sure they've got it down to a science, like what words, what actions, what images affect people emotionally. I think obviously we've talked, everybody talks about how Trump is appealing to people's emotions, right? To people's anger. It's not about logic or practical things or policy. It's about emotion. And so I think part of what I wanted to do is to show how ridiculous it's gotten and make people think about it. I mean, a lot of people are thinking about it, so.
Well,
But,
I think it's a lot worse than ridiculous. It's deceitful, because the more that you have to, the more that a politician confines himself to emotion, the more obvious it should become that his attitude towards the people he's speaking to is full of contempt. That is, because how can anybody believe that a politician can actually believe the kinds of things that you were saying? Right? That is, they know that. No politician can have, how could a politician have the gall to stand up and say things like that without having the intelligence to realize that it's disgusting and crazy and deceitful? I mean, there has to be a complete split between the way the politician's behaving in public and what the person knows privately. And what I can't understand is, how is it possible for the audience not to recognize that they're witnessing fraud?
So I wanted to ask you a question about we were talking about artists and one of the advantages artists have, or not advantages, but special sort of placement in the
sure.
tapestry, right? And one of them that I find interesting is a lot of artists, especially conceptual artists and especially performance-oriented people, is this role of the amateur. Artists can kind of be an amateur
Right.
ecologist, an amateur politician, an amateur. So I feel like it frees up the possibility of failure, right? And you want to talk a little bit about that kind of like the freedom and the crux of the, sort of taking on this sort of amateur.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a freedom, and then there are, limitations, monetary if you were like a professional politician or a professional actor, you'd have tons of money and time to do it, to really fine-tune your craft in a way. But you, as an artist, you get to kind of be the producer and the director and the, performer at the same time. Obviously, there's collaboration involved with being an artist as well.
But there's sort of permission to not be perfect at it, right?
Yeah. There's permission to, the production value on the video is not. I mean, I guess, am I thinking in the way that
Well, it's just like if you were really trying to be a politician and this project was about really finding out what people think, and you were really making a speech trying to get us to vote for
Sure.
you, there would be goals that are outside of you that are necessary.
Right.
Right, but as an artist, your goals can be, you can go through that process with very different goals. And in a sense, you're sort of workshopping something that's professionalized in an unprofessional way, which
Right,
kind of
that's
frees up information and frees up conversation and you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's what
yeah.
that's what it's.
Yeah, totally. That, it frees up, it's also, I don't know, I was thinking about the sort of, you get a lot of leeway in a way as an amateur politician. I was thinking about the way that these viewer responses were coming through, and I was thinking about how politicians actually really do, like, they take polling and they mine what people are thinking about. And obviously, if you were a politician, you'd have, thousands and thousands of know what people are thinking, right? But then again, as an artist, you can do different things with that information, with the smaller pool that you get.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
My
I
pleasure.
kind of came late to this because every time I walked into the library and I saw the display, it was so authentic. I was kind of dismissive about it because I thought it was Jim Himes for a second. But what I noticed with people is the relationship they have to their representatives, the politicians, is it seems to be kind of a loop because we were talking about all this research that they do. So, they're finding out what people are interested in, but the net result from what I can tell is that people are trained to respond to what the politicians say because they tell them what they should value in a candidate. So it's as if politicians are in the position where they have a job description and they're telling the voters that they should vote for them on the basis that they have the right to define their own job description, what the public should value in them, instead of the public deciding it for themselves. So I'm just kind of curious, we were just talking about with an artist communicating to the audience, it seems to be more of a one-way thing. There's not, what's interesting about this is that you were building your presentation on the basis of prior contact with the audience. Now, I looked at your website and you do a lot of work with sculpture and painting. Do you try to apply that kind of two-way communication with the other forms of expression?
Oftentimes, yes, I do. I mean, this is a much more involved form of communication, but when I was making sculptures in my studio, I just felt like there was something missing that I wanted people to see my work, and come in and respond to it. I wanted to be able to have a conversation with people. So I would go out, I would take my sculptures out to the street and do a performance with them and carry them around. And so, yeah, I think that this has been, this has been evolving for a while in me. And for the ink blot project that I was talking about, that started with studio work. That was just me drawing with ink and trying to figure out what it was about in my studio, and then figuring out that, this could be applied to a public performance and has more meaning as a prop that communicates to people more directly, or fails to communicate to people.
It's brilliant. And I think I told that to you, Olivia, when I saw it. And I was reading an article in the Times recently about our president-elect and regarding the selection of the Bannon. And he just kept saying over and over again how smart he was to do the Breitbart, and because he singled out a market, he singled out an audience, and it just mirrors to me what they're performing to people,
Right.
and
Oh,
giving
yeah.
them and it just, this is what you did, this is what you came to us. And it's just so clever and brilliant. And then, but the flip side to that, the frightening part is that now a non-politician got the top job.
Right.
So, but I love that. I love this. Now it's your second piece.
Yeah, this is my sort of second campaign
Ish.
iteration.
It might
this.
start to show people the risks.
Yeah, one would hope, you know.
Yeah.
I gave a stump speech for the last project that was probably even more, well, I wouldn't say it was more, the sentence structures were really nonsensical, and I gave it and I had it better, more well memorized than this one, and, you know, I thought that that the audience, everyone in the audience, everybody on the street was in on the joke in a way, but and most people were, but you know, there was a guy idling in his car who said, "Great speech," you know, and I mean, if there are people like that out there, I mean, obviously, it's not everybody, but there are people like that. It's a little bit scary when you think about the fact that people can respond to just an emotional appeal, gesticulation, gestures, and facial expressions, and, you know, stuff like that, that they're not words, but they affect people.
Well, this was
know?
your your campaign ad that we watched. I was giggling out loud in the library and, had to look foolish, but I didn't care. It was so good. And what's the name of that thing you carry?
It's one of my sculptures.
That's one of your
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. And I was like, and no one's batting an eye. So but it was perfect statement for what was happening. I was like, this is a parallel universe. Because we're in.
Yeah.
Thanks for giving it a vision.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions and comments. Appreciate it.
So I think that unless anyone has we're all going to go have wine now and cheese at Franklin Street Works. And he'll be there too. So we can ask more questions without the microphone. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, David. Thank you,
Thank you,
Ferguson.
Terry.
Thank you, Cultural Alliance Fairfield County.